episode 5 of the Checkered Flag Podcast. I am co-host Drew, joined here with Nate, where we'll be talking about the pre-race show before we get set up at the Phoenix Raceway track. I know I mentioned in the last podcast episode that we're going to be doing things a little bit differently with kind of like a post-race show and then a pre-race show. More like a podcast. I don't even know what I'm talking about, a show, but kind of going into, this weekend, we got Phoenix coming up. Obviously, some things to look forward to. We got the new horsepower package going from 600 to 750, as well as a collab with IndyCar. I know we did it last week with the trucks at St. Petersburg, but, the whole NASCAR series between O'Reilly's and the Cup Series is also going to be at the Phoenix racetrack. So a couple of things to look forward to. But first, let's talk about the horsepower package, because I know we saw it at COTA. We haven't seen it, or we did see it at the Clash a little bit, but granted, that was kind of an extreme circumstance, the caution out at Snowman Gray. So, what are your thoughts on this new horsepower package, and how do you think they're going to perform at the track?
For me, I love the new horsepower package. I think NASCAR is meant to go fast. That's the big thing about NASCAR. We want to be going fast. We don't want no less horsepower. We want more horsepower. I want even more than 750 horsepower. So, I'm excited about it. I'm excited. I think it really fits with the Hell Yeah campaign. Hell yeah, more horsepower, America, bald eagles. It's going to be awesome. And I hope that it provides some better racing for us at Phoenix. We haven't seen that here in the past couple of years. I'm just hoping that, it helps to get these guys a little bit more competitive, so we're not seeing the same driver up front all race.
Yeah, just like the Ellen show. You get a horsepower. You get a horsepower. Everybody gets horsepower. Man, we've been missing this a long time for, those that have been watching the sport for a long time. I know, the last year, I think when we had, Jesus Christ, I'm dying over here. Yeah. But I remember, we had that 900 horsepower package on the mile and a halfs back in 2014. And that, in my opinion, was the best mile and a half racing we've seen out of NASCAR in the last 20 years or so. The high horsepower meant that, they were flying on the front stretch, dove it into the corner. People were able to do slide jobs, ride the outside line, coming out of the corner, had great speed. So, this is definitely something new. And I know Phoenix, we know, has been the championship the last 6 years, hasn't gotten the action and engagement from fans that, we saw at Homestead Miami Speedway. So, I'm very curious to see how it's going to go on a short intermediate oval like Phoenix. Granted, it is a very interesting choice of track. I know that's, we're going to have a lot of other races on the schedule, like New Hampshire, Gateway, all the short tracks that are going to have more horsepower, but we need that stuff on the intermediates, the mile and a halves. That's where you get good racing. That's why we saw Chase Elliott on that overtime restart go from 10th to 1st in 2 laps and win the race. And we were both there, and we know how good mile and a half racing can get if you add more horsepower to the damn cars. So, yeah. Phoenix is going to be great. With me working at ticket sales at NASCAR, I always talk about how gorgeous the Phoenix facility is, the entire environment around it. It's definitely a fun weekend, but the racing product needs to improve, and I'm hoping that that's the case with this new horsepower package. But some other news this week, what about Alex Bowman? What is happening to that man?
Yeah, he got diagnosed with vertigo this past week. I heard he was running some races for Hendrick. They came out, made a statement, and they're like, he's not able to race. He's not fit to race with the package, or with the sickness that he's been given. I don't know if it's a sickness, or I don't really know much about vertigo. I know it kind of makes you feel dizzy. Obviously, if you're driving a NASCAR, I don't think being dizzy is something you want to be experiencing. But I think that, I don't really know, is this Hendrick just telling us that he has vertigo, or is it actually Alex Bowman being sick?
All right, settle down. We're not going to go into some conspiracy theories. We've already been down that road before. But, man, Alex Bowman cannot catch a break with his career, man. From his back injury to concussions to just being sick, we've talked a lot about him being on the hot seat, but this is just not fun. He's last in the points as a Hendrick car, not able to drive this weekend. I feel bad, man. I really like Alex Bowman. He's a really consistent driver, keeps it clean. And the fact that, all this bad luck is just getting thrown on him, I feel like, we may see some changes in 2027 with Hendrick, but, who's to say what Rick Hendrick and those guys will do with Alex Bowman, down the road, because obviously we're only 3 races into the season. A lot can change in the span of 4 to 5 months. So, prayers for speedy recovery for Alex Bowman, but Anthony Alfredo will be subbing in for for Alex Bowman, and I know that Anthony Alfredo is not a guy you typically see in the Cup Series. He's on a part-time schedule with the number 62 car. Can't remember what the team name is, but runs that Dude Wipes car. We saw it at the 500 in the duels, so he has some Cup Series experience. Going to be really curious to see how that car performs, because we've seen in the past, like Josh Berry drove the 9 car at Richmond a couple of years ago, finished second place in that race. We've seen guys sub in to these higher teamed cars and perform well. So this may provide an opportunity for Anthony Alfredo to get promoted in the Cup Series down the road, which would be awesome. But some other news, going from Chevy team to Chevy team, Richard Childress Racing just recently announced a part-time schedule for Cleetus McFarland. Hasn't been guaranteed he's going to run multiple races. All depends on how he does at Rockingham. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I like the move a lot by RCR to bring on Cleetus. Obviously, I got the Cleetus shirt on. I've been a Cleetus fan. I was a Cleetus fan before I was a NASCAR fan. So I really like what he's doing to bring some attention back to the sport, and help to have that personality around the sport. I know that he doesn't necessarily have as much experience as some of these other drivers may have. Obviously, we saw what happened at Daytona in the trucks race. Early in the race, I don't even know if he made it 10 laps and he had already spun out. So I think that lack of experience is going to show. I don't think that it's a matter of, I was listening to Dale Jr. talking to him on his podcast earlier today, and he was just telling him, the best thing that he can do out there is run a good race, because that's what's going to be able to propel him to get to that next level, right? He's going to need to run a clean race, whether it's he's being passed by the leaders or if he's running up there in the front. He's going to have to be able to run that clean race and be able to have the courtesy to let drivers around him if he's in the back of the pack. And that's going to be what allows NASCAR to give him the green light to race at Talladega later on this year. I know he's saying he wants to mainly run super speedway races, which I think that kind of fits his persona. It fits who he is as a person. And I think it fits the viewership too. It fits the people that are going to or the races that are going to have the most eyeballs on them. They're going to be your Daytonas, your Talladegas, those kinds of races that just have a name to them. Yeah. So I like what they're doing as far as bringing him in for those races, and I'm excited to see what other races he might run this year.
Yeah, and we went back and forth on this through text message. I'm kind of going to go on a little rant here. Not really too long of a rant, but I completely disagree with Nathan. I think that this is a terrible decision by Richard Childress Racing. I don't believe it's a bad decision by Cleetus, because Cleetus is just going with the flow. We know how he's been. We know his personality. He's just going to take what he can get. But the fact that you've given this guy one truck start, and now you're throwing him into the O'Reilly series, there are people in ARCA that are more capable of driving that car than Cleetus. Granted, Cleetus has driven a lot of different race cars in his lifetime. I don't think he's ready for this ride just yet. I think he needed a couple more truck starts before he started in O'Reilly's, but it's hard to stay impartial to this, because I've seen guys go from ARCA. They spent a year there. They spent a year in trucks, fought for a ride in O'Reilly, spent a year in O'Reilly's before they even made it into the Cup Series. I mean, think about guys like William Byron. Think about guys like Tyler Reddick, Ryan Blaney. Like, they all started and then they did, multiple years in the lower series before they made it in the Cup. So, who's to say that he's not going to drive in Talladega Fall for the Cup Series? Like, you're setting a precedent for, NASCAR drivers and social media content creators to just go ahead and be like, hey, I have a great fan base of people. I can just go ahead and, put my name out there and then, see what kind of old head over there would likes my personality and throw me in a car and drive a couple of laps around it. But I don't think this is the right move. I think he's not ready yet. I think he needed a couple more starts in trucks. But, at the same time, he is driving in Richard Childress Racing equipment. Austin Hill has won both. He didn't win both races, but he was pretty damn close. But Jesse Love coming off a championship, like, you're going against those two guys that are prominent in the O'Reilly series, and then you're going to throw a third car out there that's going to run worse than, whoever ran Rockingham that one year. But I don't know. I don't really like the move. I think that Cleetus is going to, try to take care of the car as much as he can. He's expected to not run great. He's probably going to get lapped. It's going to his main focus has to be about getting out of the leader's way and lead lap cars' way, because the quicker you get that done, the more people are comfortable driving around you and the more opportunities you'll see down the road.
Yeah. Another thing too, I guess, why I like the pick a lot more is because I like how Cleetus is treating the NASCAR scene as opposed to treating it how he treats his YouTube channel. He's taking a lot more serious. I was listening to him, like I said earlier, on the Dale Jr. podcast, and he was saying like how he has to learn how to take off of his Cleetus hat and be able to put on a more serious hat to be in NASCAR. And he was even mentioning how he's going to buy a late model and run it at the Freedom Factory to get used to the car style, because he said the biggest thing for him is the difference between a NASCAR or, what he's usually used to running, like a Crown Vic or something stupid like that, is that the NASCAR has a wedge body style to it, to where it's not completely symmetrical, where as if you're driving a Crown Vic or something like that is completely symmetrical. I mean, if you look at those trucks, those are, for me at least, that's the easiest way to see it. Those things do not sit straight. They sit like this, and it affects the way that the air goes over the car, and I think that's part of why he got loose at Daytona. Also, lack of experience. I'll give you that. But I also think that, he has the leg up. He owns his own racetrack. Granted, it's a smaller track. It's a smaller venue for him to be able to practice at, but he can run as many laps as he wants to on the Freedom Factory to be able to get the feel for a late model car. He's going to run some late model races too. And I really am excited to see what happens. I also do think that, while he might not be the most qualified driver, we have seen, drivers in the past, especially like way back in NASCAR's early history, like in the 70s and 80s, where drivers, didn't have any experience, and they're running Daytona 500, So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think it's cool that NASCAR is kind of giving him an opportunity. I guess we'll just have to see what he does with it.
Yeah, and I think that Cleetus doing the late models at this Freedom Factory is really smart, because you don't want to go into this blind. You need to get as many laps in on a simulator in a late model, trying to push yourself so you're set for the race day, because it's going to be coming up in crunch time. And I know that with the lack of experience Cleetus has, we don't want to see him wreck out the first 5 laps like he did at Daytona. Everyone loves Cleetus. I mean, I know a lot of people, this fan base needs someone like Cleetus McFarland. And the fact that, if he spends a couple of laps and wrecks himself, a lot of people are just going to tune out. They're not even going to want to watch the rest of the race because they're primarily watching him. So
Yep.
I think NASCAR is doing a great job in terms of promoting Cleetus and getting him opportunities to race in the primary series. But at the same time, I think NASCAR is making a wrong decision and throwing him into the wolves, especially considering how much experience he has. But speaking of tracks, at least we're not going to see him at Phoenix. So we do have a couple of weeks before that shit show happens. But Phoenix Raceway. I mean, man, I talked about it earlier. Gorgeous facility, but the racing product sucks. And I try to stay impartial to that. But unfortunately, I just can't. I mean, I remember the ovals, or the blue ovals, dominated that race for 3 years. That's why they won back-to-back championships. That's why Hendrick is the only other winner at that race. You had Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson again. You've only seen 2 manufacturers. So, considering that we're going into Phoenix and Toyota's been on a hot streak, what are we thinking? We thinking Toyota takes this weekend over?
I'd like to think that Toyota has a good shot at it. Christopher Bell and Denny Hamlin obviously have run really well here last year, I think, but those were the only 2 drivers that were able to keep it inside that top 10 range. It looks like, I think Christopher Bell finished 11th in the spring race, and then he finished 11th in the fall race, finished first in the spring race. So I think, but if you look outside of that top 10, just those 2 guys, the next guy shows up at 14th. So I don't really know how they're going to do. Obviously, they're dominating right now. Tyler Reddick, I gave him way too little credit last week, and he qualified on the pole and then dominated the whole race. So I don't really know. I do think that we might see some different manufacturers take it to victory lane here. But I just hope that we're not seeing the same 3 or 4 guys up front the whole race.
I mean, that's what happens when you get back to the traditional NASCAR ovals. You get the same guys running up front. That's why we see guys like Byron, Larson, Briscoe, Hamlin, Bell, like championship 4 contenders last year running up front. And I think that it's going to be a very similar process. But, I'm very curious to see what Toyota's going to do, especially coming into this weekend when, Toyota's been pretty dominant in Phoenix Spring in comparison to the fall race. So I think that they're going to have a really good shot in getting a win. I believe Christopher Bell is probably going to get the win. I'm not foreshadowing or anything. I don't have insider knowledge, but, just on my previous experience of watching how good Christopher Bell runs at Phoenix, I think he's going to take it home. But, obviously can't rule out 2311, can't rule out the rest of the Gibbs teammates. So, Toyota is going to continue their hot streak. It just depends on who's actually going to be in victory lane after the weekend ends. But, man, we're finally getting into the normal ovals. After 3
Yes.
wild cards, you had Daytona 500, the Super Bowl of our sport. You had Echo Park Speedway, arguably the most entertaining racetrack on schedule. And then you throw in a Circuit of the Americas race that's only been around for about 5 years in NASCAR. So, 3 really exciting races for new fans. For fans that are starting to get into NASCAR, wanting to root for Cleetus McFarland, all those people that are getting into NASCAR. And then you get to a track like Phoenix where, it's 50 laps in. They're gone, just like that. They're gone.
Yep.
And it sucks because, like I mentioned, Phoenix, great area, great track. The product needs to be better. And I'm really hoping that this horsepower improvement in terms of the package is really going to reflect on, what we're looking forward to this season. But yeah, I mean, it sucks to see the fan base kind of just dwindle down a little bit after those 3 wild cards, but it happens. It happens to every sport. I mean, you're not going to throw the Super Bowl, in the first game of the year and then have like the conference championship and the divisional. You're not going to have those, like NASCAR does, because NASCAR's biggest event is the first race of every
Yeah.
season. Things are just going to slowly dwindle down more and more. But, you get to Daytona, then you get to Atlanta, then you get to Coda, and then you get to Phoenix, and then it just drops like a rock. So, definitely something to look forward to. I'm going to be curious to what Adam Stern. Where the hell did that come from? What's his
Out of
name?
left field.
What is his name? I know him. I connect with him. I've connected with him on LinkedIn. I follow his page. He talks about like NASCAR viewership between like the Cup Series race, the IndyCar race, the O'Reilly's race. So I'm curious to see what those numbers are in relation to previous years. But, what are your thoughts on, this whole, schedule, 3 wild cards and Phoenix? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like NASCAR is just showing everything that they can right as soon as the season starts. But I think that we got to kind of have some evenness to the schedule and not just start off so hot and then just drop off of a cliff, kind of like what we're doing right now. I think there are some better races that they could be running right now. I think that if you start off Daytona, Atlanta, Circuit of the Americas, you're already starting to go down the hill a little bit with the Circuit of the Americas. But I mean, what's stopping them from throwing like a Kansas in there right now? I mean, Kansas has been producing some good finishes. Obviously, like Charlotte has been producing good finishes too, but that I think should stay towards the middle of the season where it's at right now. You got to have something in the summertime, like early summertime, for these people to start watching it. People are going to be, more relaxed in their schedule. People are going to be going out to dinner more often. You're going to be able to watch and catch more races. I think that it's just important for them to start mixing it in. Like maybe if we start off hot with Daytona and Atlanta and then put Circuit of the Americas a couple of races afterwards and give something like, I don't know, Nashville or something like that, or a Homestead kind of race right now, and then maybe push Phoenix a little bit further back in the schedule. I also want to hear your opinion on, I guess, the Fords. Like you said, they've dominated these races. Obviously, we haven't seen them a whole lot these first 3 races. Seems like Ryan Blaney's the only one that's got some speed. Do you think we're going to see them back here at Phoenix?
It's difficult because, like I mentioned before, the Toyotas were dominant in the spring race, and this has been the last couple of years. The Blue Ovals fall short every time. I'm not sure if it's because of the climate, the track temperature, like any like stupid, outside circumstance. But we don't really see the Blue Ovals at these. We don't really see the Blue Ovals at these kind of ovals. What am I saying, dude? All right, we
Well,
don't
you're
really.
not wrong.
Yeah, but I think that Ryan Blaney is going to continue to carry the Blue Ovals like he always does. It's been doing that for years. Logano will probably get top 15, top 10. Cindric outside the top 20. I think RFK will be pretty solid. I'm excited to see what Priest got because Priest is the one Ford that I am looking forward to most this year because of the way he started out. He won the Clash, wasn't really prominent in the last couple of races given he's not the greatest road course racer. Actually, I'd like to differ. He's a pretty solid road course racer, but you have Blaney that carries Team Penske. There's not really anyone in RFK right now that is really kind of carrying their team to, a solid position that they should be in order to make the chase. So I'm curious to see what Ryan Preece has got. In terms of the other Fords, Cody Ware, he's not going to be up front. Like that's a given. Are there any other Ford teams I'm missing besides Front Row? Front Row is the only other team. You could probably see Zane Smith with a flash of a top 15 because I know he got 2 top 10s earlier this year, still in the chase points format. But, I don't think that Ford is going to be as prominent as these Yoders and bow ties. So, um,
Yeah,
I don't really know, but, hopefully we get some good action between all three manufacturers. That's all I'm hoping for. I don't want like a
exactly.
one-sided race like Toyota has had for the last 3 races. It's not fun to watch, especially if you're a fan of the other 2 manufacturers.
Exactly.
But looking into this weekend, Phoenix Raceway, obviously, last episode we talked about our pick for the week. I picked Hamlin and you picked Chase Elliott. So, 2 solid racers. We've seen them both be successful at Phoenix in the past. But, let's talk about fantasy. Who are we liking on the starting lineup and who are we liking in the garage?
So my first pick is going to be Denny Hamlin. I think he's been the most dominant out of all of the racers at this track. Obviously, he was dominating the championship race in the fall back in November. So I think he's going to finish well here. So I've got him starting off number 1, finished second in the spring race last year. I think he's just going to bring that same thing to the table. How we were just talking about Toyotas, might as well throw another one in there. Christopher Bell, another guy who's finished really well here as of recent. I think he continues that level of dominance at this racetrack. Um, especially from what we're seeing out of the Toyotas. I think the Toyotas are just dominating right now, and it's going to take something to change that. These other manufacturers to make a little bit of a change to be able to figure out what they're doing different to be able to catch up and compete with these guys. My number 3 is going to be Kyle Larson. Obviously, won the championship here at Phoenix last year and has finished third there the last 2 times that he raced. So I think he's going to have a really good shot at finishing well. My next one is going to be Joey Logano. I think Joey Logano is going to be up there with the front of the pack, just because I don't know. I haven't really picked him a whole lot as of recent. I think it's good to use him. He's raced well here. Obviously, we were talking the Penske Fords dominated throughout past seasons and being able to take home championships at this race. So I think Logano is going to perform well. My next pick is going to be Josh Berry. I like him just because he's kind of a sneakier pick. Finished 4th place in the spring race here last year, and then he finished in 7th at the championship race last year as well. So we both got 2 top 10s here at Phoenix. I think it's a good kind of wild card to use right now. And then my garage pick is going to be Ross Chastain. I haven't picked him at all this year. I love Ross. He got a top 11 and a top 30, or he got 11th and 13th the last 2 times he raced here. So 2 top 15s out of Ross. Figure I should probably use him at some point this year, being that he is my favorite driver. And yeah, so that's going to be my picks. What about you?
Yeah, I'm going to start with the garage, and I'm just going to throw a legacy car in there. I'm not sure what happens with Phoenix, but there's at least one Legacy Motor Club car that wrecks out. I know for the spring it was Eric Jones. The fall was John Hunter Nemechek. So, I don't know what goes on at Phoenix and what happens with those guys. I'm specifically going to throw John Hunter Nemechek in there because Eric Jones spun out last week at COTA, was not really in contention during that race. So, John Hunter Nemechek's in my garage, unfortunately. Gotta throw some shade at the Toyotas. They are looking promising with 2311 and Joe Gibbs, but there's of course the third team that's lacking right now. But in my starting lineup, I'm just gonna make this pretty clear. Tyler Reddick. I don't need to explain that one. What else do I not need to explain? Kyle Larson, don't need to explain that one. Christopher Bell, don't need to explain that one. Denny Hamlin, don't need to explain that one. Wild card, I'm throwing a wild card in there, and it's going to be Chris Buescher. I really like Chris Buescher's speed at the short flat ovals. He was really successful, running top 10 consistently at every oval. New Hampshire, Gateway, Phoenix, those are similar style tracks and similar the way that they drive them. So throwing Chris Buescher in there because I haven't used him once, and I got to have to get some picks out of him eventually. So I'm picking him for this weekend. But I'm pretty sure you know why I'm not going to explain myself in some of my other picks. They're pretty common sense.
Yeah, especially with how dominant those Toyotas have been, bro. It's like it's crazy.
Yeah.
I do like that Chris Buescher pick a lot. I was debating on throwing him or Ross in the lineup, so I'm glad that you took him because if you didn't, I was probably going to take him. And I do like that car a lot. That 17. It's he seems to always have just enough to get into a good finish. So
he was very, very similar to Ross Chastain in 2025. He was just a guy you can guarantee that can get a 7th or 8th place finish week in, week out. And we haven't really seen that with these wild cards, but as we start to kind of normalize and get into the rhythm and, every weekend, Chris Buescher is going to be up there in contention running top 10 every weekend. And we saw that last year. We've seen that in years past. I don't know what's going on with me, dude. I think it's the medicine I took earlier. I think I'm seeing the Hat Man from the Benadryl I took, but
yeah, how are you feeling? You feeling better?
I'm trying, man. I took a ton of drugs before I got to work, and then at like 3 o'clock they started wearing off. I started getting like really sweaty and nauseous. I'm like, dude, there's no way I can last this long. Pause. But yeah, I'm feeling better. We're gonna get after it next week. I'll feel a lot more. I mean, I'm a little bit more energetic right now, so hopefully the Checkered Flag podcast continues to live on despite my besides my camera shitting the bed and me shitting the bed and actually shitting on my bed.
What did he say?
But anyways, yeah, this is the end of the Checkered Flag podcast. We're going to completely disregard that last 10 seconds. Hope you guys enjoy. Feel free to like and subscribe and all the buttons on social media. I'll see you guys later. Take care.
Yeah, and guys, if you guys like this new format of us doing the pre-race and post-race, go ahead, drop a comment down below. Haven't had a comment yet. Would love to hear what you guys have to say. But yeah, love you guys. Thank you for watching, and peace.
As always, turn fast, go fast. I don't remember the rest of the saying.
Buggity, buggity, buggity.
Oh my.